is Expand Your Horizon Preview Edition for the game starting on Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, and ending on Sunday, February 15th, 2026. I am Bob McDonald, and joining me is my co host, Jim Zero.
Hey Bob, this week there is a massive worldwide sporting event happening, and everybody's going to be watching. I can't wait to talk about it. Fort Wayne versus Green Bay on ESPN2. But there's 10 other really good games going on this week at the Horizon as well.
Well, let's go with that.
Oh wait, is there something called the Super Bowl going on? I forget.
And something in Italy, Olympic something, and then there's this Daytona thing where a bunch of cars run around in the track for 500 miles. That's going on this week too. I mean, there's a lot going on, but yeah, it's here. I mean, that game is up there, at least in our circles. But we'll talk about that. Before we do, of course, the Expand Your Horizon Preview Edition is sponsored by the Horizon League. That reminds you to make your plans to be in Indy March 8th through the 10th for the 2026 Barbasol Horizon League Basketball Championships. After you get all the insights from us here at the Horizon Roundtable, visit horizonleague.com for championships information, merchandise, life in the league story, Gold Now content, and much more. Remember, March starts here in Indianapolis at Corteva Coliseum, March 8th through the 10th. And let's get into the first game, which is actually on Tuesday. And this actually requires some explanation. Milwaukee was supposed to play IU Indy at the end of the season on February 28th, but courtesy of the massive snowstorm, the IU Indy Purdue Fort Wayne game had to be rescheduled, and they rescheduled it for the 28th. And lo and behold, the game that was scheduled on the 28th, Milwaukee IU Indy, got bumped to Tuesday. And IU Indy had themselves quite a game on Saturday. They beat Cleveland State by probably less than than they probably I was thinking, because they were up by 20 in that game at a certain point. And Milwaukee is still struggling. Now, Faison Fields is back, but of course they're still hurting. And Milwaukee, of course, they came close, but the struggles continue for Milwaukee. Good news is they are playing an IUND team that they have beaten before, so at least they've got that going for them. And this time around, they do have Faison Fields back, so they're not going to be completely wanting in the front court.
Yeah, Faison Fields returning is big for the Panthers. He's just a really good finisher around the rim, great rebounder, rim protector. For Milwaukee, they've just really struggled to shoot the ball from deep. And so IU Indy will give you plenty of opportunities. Both teams are going to want to play, or had been wanting to play a little bit faster. Milwaukee had been slowing it down a little bit, but Milwaukee's going to need to shoot the ball better. You have to give them a lot of credit. I know there's close line counts in, was it hand grenades and horseshoes and hand grenades?
Correct. Horseshoes and hand grenades. Correct.
Yep. They've come close with a totally depleted roster. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They're starving for a victory. If they can shoot the ball at a reasonable clip, they're probably going to be right in the game against the Jaguars. And the Jaguars have got D'Agostino back, and so they get their
made a difference against Cleveland State. That's for sure.
Made a huge difference. When you get your best player back, it makes a big difference for you. And so they had been really scrappy, then lost their way for a little bit there, and now played a little bit better basketball again. And so this will be, even though it's two teams that, if things ended today, are going to be in the play-in game, it still matters. Even within that play-in game scenario, let's say both teams can't turn the rest of their season around, having a 2 or 3 game separation if you're Milwaukee when this is all said and done, versus no longer having the tiebreaker and only being 1 game ahead of IU Indy for home court advantage in the Horizon League tournament. This is a big game in that regard. And then obviously both teams have better aspirations than just hosting the 10 versus 11 game. Both teams still trying to fight for better seeding from there. But at a minimum for that play-in game, this one matters right now.
Absolutely. So let's flip the page to Thursday, and we'll talk about IU Indy again. They're hosting another game at 6:30 Eastern. This time it's going to be Northern Kentucky, and Northern Kentucky is in a much better position than Milwaukee is, especially considering that Northern Kentucky beat Milwaukee to snap their 5-game losing streak. And I don't know if fatigue sets in for IU Indy in this case, but I guess we'll see. I mean, they got enough guys that maybe fatigue isn't going to be an issue.
Yeah, Northern Kentucky, obviously the big story for them is they're without Cale Robinson and expected to be
Yes,
without him for a while. I mean, he's wearing a protective boot. Uh, they got Goretzka going again. You still have O'Day, a man amongst boys, offensively in this league. You have two teams that are going to play fast. This will be an entertaining game, or should be an entertaining game, between the Norse and the Jaguars. Uh, with Northern Kentucky, even though they snapped their their losing streak, they were close to doing it against Green Bay. Went to overtime and lost on a last second shot, and they were down double digits in that game.
sure.
They did hold on to beat Milwaukee, but when I say hold on, they had a double digit lead, and Milwaukee made it a lot more uncomfortable for them. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Northern Kentucky, even though they got a win, I wouldn't necessarily say they have it rolling again here. So this would be a real competitive game, and Northern Kentucky, has kind of fallen in the standings. I think they're in seventh place right now at 7-8. So they need this win for
They
sure.
do. They absolutely do. And one other thing that I should point out the fact that we mentioned in the preview of the Milwaukee IU Indy game the 3-point shooting, where obviously Milwaukee is good. Every opposing team against IU Indy is going to get plenty of opportunities to shoot 3-pointers. And the concern with Northern Kentucky is against Milwaukee, their 3-point shooting dropped off a cliff in that second half. They only shot 3 of 13 in that second half, and they can't really afford to have that happen. Conversely, where they kind of lack in the 3-point department, or did against Milwaukee in the last game or so, they're going to make up for it in the rebounding. They're going to make up for. I feel like they're going to make up for it in the rebounding department because a guy like LJ Wells is going to certainly have the advantage on a guy like Finley Woodward.
Yeah, and LJ Wells just needs to stay out of foul trouble so he can stay in the game. Like he was in foul trouble
Yes,
against the Panthers. He played a decent game against Green Bay. He made some really big finishes at the hoop against Green Bay, but then missed some free throws that would have been helpful for them. But at the end of the day, this is a game that neither team is playing great basketball right now. So, but one team in Northern Kentucky really needs this if they want to have a home game and still want to play for a home game in the Horizon League tournament.
yep. All right. Well, we're now on the nationally televised game, 7 p.m. Eastern. Jim, I know you're excited about this one. Purdue Fort Wayne playing Green Bay, and this game definitely has certainly has some postseason implications to it because you're talking about the two teams that are basically neck and neck for third place in the Horizon League, and they're still within shouting distance of one of the higher seeds. So this is going to definitely be a big test for both Green Bay and Purdue Fort Wayne. Purdue Fort Wayne, they're going into another road game. This is definitely going to be something that they are going to have to contend with because the last two games have not gone well for them, in spite of the fact, Purdue Fort Wayne was kind of on a heater. Now they're not anymore. They got to get back, and they got to get back against the Green Bay team who didn't have a problem with them last time they played at home. Green Bay won by 18.
Yeah, Green Bay came out and jumped on them and never really looked back. Got a little tight. I mean, that's the Green Bay way right now is that they get big leads and then kind of have to hold on. But they regrouped and put the Mastodons away on New Year's Day. This game, stylistically, a little bit different. You've got Fort Wayne wanting to shoot a lot of threes, play a little bit faster. Green Bay's going to play slower, take threes, when they're there. Defense, and rebounding. I wouldn't say either of these teams are great defensively. Green Bay a little bit better rebounding team. So it'll be interesting to see. Green Bay hasn't had the most handling success this year. So, they had, gotten into third place in the league, had Oakland come to town and lost. Then they had a 2-game homestand with Cleveland State and Wright State. And they lost both games. So they haven't, when people started to pay attention, they haven't necessarily handled that well. Now, Green Bay's promoting this game. It's on ESPN2. They're trying to get a big student turnout. Let's see how they handle a bigger crowd on national TV. It's gonna be the key to the game, because if you were to ask me, not just because I'm a Phoenix fan, I think Green Bay plays a better style of basketball to win this game this week, but that doesn't mean they're gonna win. And quite frankly, anytime I've started, get a little confident in Green Bay, they take a 20-point shellacking. So that'd be on brand for Green Bay to get whooped on national TV.
Is that considered a form of the announcer's jinx when you do that? Because I don't know. Entirely possible.
No, that's just more of the I've never been able to have nice things as a sports fan, but that's a whole separate podcast.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the second 7 p.m. Eastern game. It's Detroit Mercy and Wright State. And the last time these two teams played, Wright State, yeah, they were kind of rolling at Callahan Hall, but Detroit Mercy made a game of that, and Wright State only got a 2-point win out of that one. But fast forward to this Thursday, Wright State is still got a game up on everybody. Game up on Oakland at the top of the standings. But Detroit Mercy needs this game to at least stay within the middle of the pack, and definitely stay within a point where they can host that first round game on the when the tournament starts.
Yeah, Detroit, like we just saw them this past weekend playing Green Bay. You had London Maiden playing. You had Ryan Calambay. You had Legend Jeter. So there's an opportunity for them to maybe impose their size. Where, Wright State's not small by any means, but those guys are probably a little bit bigger than across the board than what Wright State can play. And for Detroit Mercy, they're a good 3-point shooting team. They're going to need to make their threes. They didn't do that against Green Bay at a super high clip. They didn't win. Wright State, just a pretty complete team. Like they play hard. That's one thing you can take.
Oh, they do.
Wright State, they play
Absolutely
hard, and they have
skill across. And it's very clear, incidentally, that Wright State, for whatever reason, they just come up with stuff that surprises you. Like, I don't know, Kellen Pickett hitting 3-pointers, which he usually doesn't do.
Yeah, I just watched him kind of destroy Green Bay in the paint, and then a week later he's bombing away from the 3-point line against Purdue Fort Wayne. He looked good doing it. So yeah, they really did. They have a pretty complete team, albeit some inexperienced players. They have some athletic players. I mean, that's a tough matchup for anybody in this league, and it's no surprise once we've got to see them on the court. 11-3 right now heading into this game. I mean, they look every bit of it.
All right. Well, let's move on to the third 7 p.m. Eastern game, and that is Youngstown State. They're heading to the arena to play Oakland. And if this is a must. This is actually a must-win game for both of these teams, because you're looking at an Oakland team that needs to keep winning to stay within shouting distance of Wright State. That's going to be huge. And then also too, this is a Youngstown State team that absolutely could have beaten them at Youngstown State when they played on New Year's Day. I mean, it was only a 2-point win for Oakland. Only got away with a 2-point win there. Now, naturally, some things have changed. Like, for example, we still don't know the status of Isaac Garrett. So that, I think that might come into play as well. But at the same time, there have been, at least and then Oakland is still smarting from the Cleveland State game, where apparently they weren't used. They couldn't get used to Woodling Gym, and they were really gearing towards playing at the Wolstein Center. We'll kind of get into that a little in a moment, but things kind of fell off the wheels for them as far as the second half is concerned of that game. Now, with that said, Youngstown State is not anywhere near as prolific a 3-point shooting team as Cleveland State, although they are decidedly more accurate.
Well, in Youngstown State, you say prolific, it depends on the game.
That's
just
true.
This past week, we saw them at their best, and I wouldn't say at their worst, but we saw all that's good with Youngstown State from the perimeter, and when they are connecting, they took down Green Bay relatively easily. They took down Purdue Fort Wayne this past week relatively easily. And when they're not hitting, they are not winning. And so from a standpoint of they are Jekyll and Hyde, the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the league right now, in terms of what to expect from them. Oakland's gonna, people tend to shoot a lot of threes against Oakland because of the zone defense. They have a hard time getting into the paint. So Youngstown State needs to have a good shooting game to have an opportunity
Yes.
here. The only other opportunity I see for Youngstown, you hit on, we're not certain with Garrett if it's status. Oakland's been playing a 7-man rotation the last couple of games.
They
If you
have.
can wear them down or get them in foul trouble, maybe that's another opportunity for Youngstown to go on the road and sneak out a victory.
Yes, and by the way, when I say decidedly less prolific than Cleveland State, when I said decidedly less prolific than Cleveland State, um, at least in conference games, Cleveland State has made tick over two more 3-pointers than Purdue than Youngstown State has, and Cleveland State is however about a half a percent. About 5% higher in field goal percentage rates. So to your point, yes, Youngstown State can make the 3-pointers. Can they be where they were as far as, quantity and accuracy as they were at the beginning of the season? That's going to be a big deal. That's going to truly be a big deal. So that leaves us with the last 7 p.m. Eastern game, and this is the first time these two teams are playing this year. Robert Morris is heading to Cleveland, playing Cleveland State at the Wolstein Center. At least we think the Wolstein Center. Please, Wolstein Center, folks. Let's hope the heat works. Otherwise, they're going back to Woodling.
They pulled that off on a quick turnaround, and obviously it worked out for Cleveland State to get a major home victory. It followed it up with a game that they probably don't want to talk about a whole lot, but this one here,
there was a 30 minutes of that Cleveland the 30 there was about 30 minutes of the IU Indy game they'd like to forget, which is pretty much the entire game. Except for the
yeah,
last 5 minutes where they ended up only losing by 8. But as many an announcer will say, the final score was not as close. The game was not as close as the final score indicated.
yeah. So this particular game, though, you have Robert Morris, great rebounding team, and then kind of like I want to say rounding into form here. They were on a 2-game win streak. They've moved into 5th place in the league standings at 8-7, and we're kind of starting to see a little more of the Robert Morris team that we were expecting to see from the start of the year. Although I didn't catch why, but looked like Al Vargas only played a few minutes in the most recent game.
He went down with an ankle injury.
So that's a factor for a team that doesn't have tremendous guard depth. Whereas, Cleveland State has a lot of guard depth. So that's kind of the strength of their team. So that could be an interesting subplot in how Robert Morris overcomes a lack of depth if Al Vargas is unable to go or is unable to go at the same level that he's been at for the rest of the season.
Well, to your point, as you mentioned, the rebounding, Robert Morris is tops in the league at least tops in the league in conference games in rebounding margin, and Cleveland State is obviously near the bottom. So that's going to be but Cleveland State's with the return of Josiah Harris, it seems like at least in the last couple of games, the decided, if we're being honest, rebounding margin for Cleveland State has kind of diminished. They're still kind of near the bottom of the league, but it may not be as much of a factor. But again, this is Robert Morris, who has clearly had no problem, even with the best teams in the Horizon League, out rebounding them. And that's going to be a big deal, especially in this game, especially when you have a team like Cleveland State, who is probably going to be in a position to not have as many to shoot a lot of 3-pointers for sure. So before we get into the Saturday games, once again, make your plans. I'm sorry.
There's Sunday games. No,
sorry,
there's the Sunday game.
Sunday. Before we get into the Sunday games, see, you'd be looking at Saturday and like, why is this happening? Why are there no games? Because Bob has no concept of time. During and also I also wanted to remind everybody to make your plans to be in Indy March 8th through the 10th for the 2026 Barbasol Horizon League Championships, because that part's important, obviously. And of course, after you get all the insights from us here at the Horizon Roundtable, for the accurate days, Sunday, not Saturday, go to horizonleague.com for championships information, merchandise, life in the league stories, golden hour content, and much more. Little Birdie told me that Ticketmaster has already got the tickets on sale for this game for the championships too. So if you go and look at that information, they might be there too. So March starts here in Indianapolis at Corteva Coliseum, March 8th through the 10th. Let's go ahead and get into Sunday. And there is a 1 p.m. Eastern game. It's going to be Youngstown State at Detroit Mercy. And this is going to be, again, this is kind of a very pivotal. Again, this is going to be. This is State's trip through Michigan, and this is going to be a big deal for them because they absolutely have to get things going. And Detroit Mercy, incidentally, is a team that you know got their season kind of rebooted uh, right at the Beagley Center, right at Saturday Family Arena, because they beat Youngstown State by 5. And to your point, and that was back, and as you recall, Jim, at the beginning of the season, Detroit Mercy had a little bit of a trouble shooting the 3-pointer. Those that has subsided, near as I can tell. And
Yeah,
so
Tyler
that's going to
Spratt.
be a big, yes, and that's going to be a big, now that, and when I think that was the game. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, either was that game or the IU Indy game where Detroit Mercy, who was really on a 3-point shooting funk, that's the game where they kind of got everything restarted, and now they're at a point where you can't really overlook when they shoot the three now.
No, and you have Nadu and Spratt, two very good 3-point shooters. It's an interesting thing for them because Orlando Lovejoy is not a 3-point shooter. He's only taken like 20 something threes on the season, only
No,
made like 4. But he's so dynamic getting into the paint and his mid-range game. But if you try to, help and stop that, then he's going to find Spratt and Nadu, and those guys can make threes. So they're a difficult team to guard, in terms of you got to pick a little bit about, what you want to stop. But overall, they're 7-7 right now in
yeah,
Horizon League play, and they absolutely, positively need a win.
oh, absolutely.
A home win, get themselves back over 500 with then what would be 5 games to play. This is a mega, 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 mega game for Detroit Mercy.
Sure. And when we talk about the 3-pointers, again, as I mentioned, in the conference, Detroit Mercy is the highest, is the best in the Horizon League in 3-point field goal percentage. And if you'd have told me that when they were in the non-conference that they were going to be in this position, I'd have told you were crazy. But
Oh,
also too,
we talked nonstop about how they could hit the broadside of a barn, and now here they
exactly.
are.
And then all of a sudden they're the best in the conference once they hit the conference slate, all apparently is forgiven. But here's the other part, that they are second in the conference in 3-point field goal percentage, right behind Oakland. And when you have a team like Youngstown State, who is kind of near the top in 3-point field goals made, running into these two teams for Youngstown State, that's going to pose some problems. That's going to pose some real problems.
Yeah, it's going to pose some problems for them. Youngstown, I mean, like I said, they're Jekyll and Hyde. So if the good Youngstown shows up, you're in trouble. And if the Youngstown that's just kind of mid shows up, I would expect a close game, but a winnable game for anybody in
Sure.
this league. That's
Right.
where Youngstown is at right now.
Yeah.
But still dangerous. Like nobody, a lot of times when you play the bottom of the league, you're like, oh, thank goodness we get a easy one. And right now, Youngstown, standings wise, near the bottom of the league, they're sitting at 9th at 5-9. But that's not an easy one. You're not
No,
getting
it
a layup.
isn't. Absolutely not. All right. So you remember how I told you that it said that IU Indy Purdue Fort Wayne had a postponement? Well, they're going to play each other on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. However, this is the This is the game in Fort Wayne, not the one in Indy. We'll talk about that one in a couple of weeks when that actually does happen. But IU Indy is finally playing Purdue Fort Wayne at 2 p.m. in Fort Wayne. So, and this is going to be another. I think when we first previewed this game, I guess you probably could rewind to 2 weeks ago and probably say the exact same things as we did because they didn't, because obviously they didn't play each other, so we didn't get a chance to evaluate that game. But I think the same things hold true here in that you're looking at an IU Indy team that will an IU both an IU Indy and a Purdue Fort Wayne team that are certainly not going to be afraid of shooting the ball. The difference is, of course, and this is one of those games where you have a Purdue Fort Wayne and an IU Indy team that are actually near the bottom in 3-point defense. IU Indy is at the bottom. Purdue Fort Wayne is at ninth. The other problem, of course, is that IU Indy's 3-point shooting has been extremely streaky. For every Cleveland State game, they've had a million other games where they haven't been able to hit. So I guess it's going to be a matter for at least for IU Indy of trying to address that because on the Purdue Fort Wayne side, while they are also rather pretty prolific as far as 3-pointers are concerned, they have Purdue Fort Wayne tends to have more of an advantage when it comes to getting points in the paint, getting shots within the 3-point arc, as we saw against Wright State, where you had guys like Corey Hadnot who had no problem getting the 15-foot jumpers off.
Yeah, Fort Wayne, I think, is uniquely equipped to handle a style against IU Indy. They have 3 guys on the court at all times that can handle the ball. And so I'm not saying that's going to negate the pressure defense from the Jaguars. I just think that they're better equipped than most teams who maybe have 2 guys that can feel like really comfortable handling the ball. Fort Wayne has 3 guys. The shooting, you talked about both teams don't defend the 3 very well, but do you hit the nail on the head? Fort Wayne shoots it better. So if it comes down to a shootout, you got to feel comfortable with Fort Wayne, especially Max Nelson. He had a really tough non-conference shooting, but he's been one of the better conference 3-point shooters, and so there isn't really a good matchup for him from the Jaguars in terms of Fort Wayne. For all that they don't have in the front court, they still have Max Nelson at 6'8", and then some combination of Elise or Levin or Duffy that they're playing. They are playing 2 or 1.5 forwards, depending on how you look at Max Nelson. Size-wise, forward, but he's a little bit more of a guard in terms of spacing the court. Anyway,
what is fascinating about this game is the fact that, to your point, I'm having a little bit of a trouble. I'm having a hard time figuring out who's actually going to rebound in this game and for IU Indy and Purdue Fort Wayne, because you are talking about the 2 worst rebounding teams in the conference. And I had to look this up and I had to double check this. Purdue Fort Wayne, as far as rebound margin is concerned, is actually 5 rebounds worse than IU Indy is, and I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, I mean, Fort Wayne has had some games where they've been absolutely demolished on the glass, but they make up for it with shooting. So this will be a offensive fan's delight.
Indeed, that will. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and move to the second 2 p.m. Eastern game. It's Wright State. They're going to the Wilstein Center to play Cleveland State, and Cleveland State, they went to the Nutter Center and beat Wright State, which, again, as I've mentioned many times over the course of this preview podcast, it's a very difficult place to win, the Nutter Center, and Cleveland State was able to do so. Do they repeat this feat? Well, that's a good question. I guess we'll find out soon enough because, again, I think because of the way Cleveland State shoots the 3-pointers, Wright State has to be absolutely cognizant of that. The other thing, too, and this is the part this is something that I noticed in the first game that I was kind of surprised by, that I was really surprised by, is that Cleveland State, and they didn't, at that time, they didn't have Josiah Harris in the lineup at this time. So I was a little surprised. I really thought that Wright State was going to get on them on the boards, and it kind of surprised me that actually was not the case. That actually wasn't the case. This is actually Wright State did beat them on the boards, but only by 3. And I and again, this was without a Josiah Harris on in the front court. So I don't know if that's going to be something. I definitely think that's going to be something Cleveland State may have a slighter advantage in. However, of course, they have so many. Wright State has done such a great job on the glass, be it through Michael Amari Bay, through Kellen Pickett, through folks like that. That I don't know if that's going to be too much of an issue. The other part, of course, is the 3-point shooting. Cleveland State shot almost 48% from 3-point, and they were able to keep Wright State at bay from the 3-point line. They only shot like 21%, 20.8%. Wright State did. So that's going to be another factor in this as well.
When they played the first time at the Nutter Center, that was before Cleveland State had started their heater.
That's right. Exactly.
That was like either the first or second game in that little win streak they went on, and people weren't expecting them because they hadn't been playing good basketball. They weren't expecting them to play good basketball.
Yeah.
When you think about this, when you think about Cleveland State though, as constructed, they like to get you spread out and find that open shooter. I think that Wright State has the length and athletic ability to still recover and get to shooters, when they're catching it, not when they're releasing it. So I feel like that could help Wright State. I also feel like Cleveland State's defense was effective when I saw them against Green Bay, because they just really kind of packed themselves into the lane and made it hard. And it was effective in the first half. In the second half, Green Bay figured some things out and shredded them for 50 points or something like that. Green Bay didn't win the game, but they shredded their defense.
Cleveland State, if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland State had to go Cleveland State lost that lead. I think Wright State went on an 18-0 run during that game, during the second half of that game, and Cleveland State had to claw their way back on that one.
Yes, they did. And so I think that Wright State just, they have the versatility to score inside. They have the ability to score from the perimeter. They have the ability to score in transition. For Wright State, it's about you got to play your game against Cleveland State and just play good enough defense that almost let Cleveland State beat themselves, if that makes any sense. But if you aren't good on the defensive end, Cleveland State will shoot the ball in your face and make it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that they do well right now is shooting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're contesting that at a much higher level, you've got a better chance to slow it down and stop it.
Yeah. All right. Well, the third 2 p.m. Eastern game is Oakland. They're going to Moon Township to play Robert Morris. Last time these two teams played, Oakland didn't have any problems. They won by 23. And again, given the question mark on Isaac Garrett, I feel that might have an effect here. But the other thing too is gonna be, as far as I can tell, is gonna be the guard, especially for this game, is gonna be the guard play. And I still think that Oakland has the advantage in the backcourt over Robert Morris.
Oh, I would totally agree with that. From a standpoint of, Oakland has some of the most dynamic guard play. They don't have a ton of them, but the guys that they have back there are really, really good. And Robert Morris, they have some decent guard play, but a little inconsistent. Robert Morris, the calling card has been rebounding. It hasn't been anything else. It hasn't been second chance points. It hasn't been defensively. It has just been rebounding. So they're going to need to rebound and do something with those rebounds against Oakland. I have no doubt that they're going to I shouldn't say I have no doubt they'll out-rebound Oakland. Oakland has still two big, strong dudes up front. But we've seen Robert Morris rebound against everybody. They're probably going to still be who they are. But what they do with it after that, that's the key to the game. That's the key to winning for them.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too with Oakland, again, speaking to the guard play, Oakland is still very good as far as the assist to turnover ratio. They're one of the top teams in the conference in doing that. And if you got a guy like Brody Robinson, who a couple of clunkers aside has been really been a really big piece for driving this Oakland offense, it's going to be a tough ask to defend him, especially if the status of Albert Vargas is still in question.
Yeah, Brody's, he gets to the free throw line all the time. He makes shots. He's the straw that stirs the drink.
Indeed, he is.
He's a dynamic player. He's an all-conference player, and nobody's going to stop Brody Robinson. It's can you at least contain him? Can you slow him down a little bit? Nobody stopped that guy, though.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, we've hit the last game, and I'm sure in your estimation, this is probably, well, I mean, in years past, it would probably be the game. But it is Green Bay going to play Milwaukee at 3 p.m. Eastern. As I long contend, this is one of those throw the records out games, especially, but you kind of do have to take that into account a little bit, especially the way things have been going for Milwaukee. But there's going to be some pride involved in this for sure.
For Milwaukee, yeah, they're on a losing streak, but they didn't play great. I mean, they haven't played great, but they're still competing. They're playing their asses off. Like, they're playing hard with what they got. And, you might, as a Green Bay fan, we might be like, oh yeah, finally they're 5-10. Green Bay is, hopefully coming into this game at 10-6. But right now Green Bay is 9-6, and you might say, oh, this is our year to win. That means absolutely nothing. I don't care how many injuries they have. They're going to play with some pride. Their fans are going to bring some energy that are, they're going to want to beat Green Bay. Like, it's a rivalry, whether the, administration for Milwaukee and the way that, sometimes they talk about Green Bay, whether they want to admit it or not, everybody else thinks it's a rivalry. It's a rivalry game. And with that said,
it absolutely
throw the records out the window. But, when you think about the game itself, Green Bay is one of the best executing offensive teams in the Horizon League. Their offense is really pretty. They really don't get rattled late in the clock. They're very comfortable playing that way. And Milwaukee has had trouble shooting the basketball. They were having trouble even when they had more players available to them. They were not a great shooting team. And the guys that they have now are relatively, a little streaky. So for Green Bay, it just, can you get Milwaukee to take the shots you want them to take and slow the game down to the pace that they want to play at? And if they can, you got to feel good about your chances. The complete wild card in all this is Faison Fields, because he has been a Phoenix killer. He has crushed Green Bay on multiple occasions throughout his time with the Panthers. And Green Bay, we saw it against Detroit. Like, they put in 3 different big guys, and Cicic had 4 fouls in 3 minutes. Ramel played decent. Lucasen, is a little bit of a wild card. He's been playing more for the Phoenix, but he's not 6'10", 225. So
no,
Faison is, a key factor here that the Phoenix should have to figure out if he's rolling, or Sekou Kona, who's a really good rebounder. If these guys get in there and get going, it'll be tough for the Phoenix to match up with that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I mean, this is that wraps it up. And I got to say this before we go. There are 3.5 games separating third place from ninth place. So depending upon how everything goes this week, we may have a whole different picture as far as the middle of the pack is concerned for the Horizon League, which, for those of you, for the uninitiated, this is kind of how the Horizon League goes every year. So, all right. So that wraps it up. Next week, I'm going to be flying solo on the preview podcast. Jim is going to be in sunny Palm Springs. He's going to be, so I'm going to be flying solo here for the preview podcast. And by the way, next week, I will be actually returning to the regular podcast. I'm going to be going live on our YouTube channel. So go ahead and you definitely want to go ahead and subscribe to that so you don't miss that. But everything else, Horizon League, HorizonLeague.com, of course, is where you can get all the championships information, all that stuff. But HorizonRoundtable.com is where you can get past episodes of this podcast and the regular podcast, as well as all of our articles. So tune in next week. Until then, thank you all for listening.